In today's video, I want to talk to you about owning an Airbnb and some potential drawbacks with utilizing that strategy as an investor. Let's dive right in. So today's video is going to be a little bit less formal than some other ones we've done on this channel. And I want to kind of just share a little bit of a parable with you guys, paint a little bit of a picture from a friend of mine that had a multi-seven-figure business that went under, taking a lot of people into bankruptcy with them. Now, I'm not going to name what the company is, but I did get his permission to share this story. I think it draws a really good parable to Airbnbs as I'm getting ready to buy my first one. I'm actually close on it this Tuesday. I'm not buying one that's like turnkey or already done. I've got to do the construction, figure out furniture and all that stuff, which I'm hoping I find help with. But I think it's really relevant to look at what went wrong with their business and how it could potentially apply to Airbnbs. You guys might have heard of the company called Turo. They let individuals rent out other people's cars. It's basically like Airbnbs for automobiles. So some friends of mine owned what was one of the largest groups that had cars on Turo. They're one of their largest customers. And the business model was super, super interesting to me. I remember sitting down with my buddy over some tacos and just walking through it. And as a car guy, it was super fascinating because they had the Instagram worthy pictures of the Porsche and BMW and Alpha and Mercedes keys in the hand, right? And I was like, that's super cool that you guys have access to just Range Rovers and Alphas and all of these higher end cars, but you don't actually have to pay for them. How does this work, right? So similarly to how a lot of investors use Airbnbs, they were leasing these vehicles and turning around and renting them out on Turo. And it was going really pretty well. They were cash flowing well. They were growing. At one point, they even had a lot right across the street from the San Diego airport where you could literally fly in, walk across the street to get a really cool car. When my wife and I were out in San Diego the first time before we moved out there, they actually let us rent a blue Porsche. And then we also got an Alfa Romeo 4C for a little bit. It was really a lot of fun. And it was going well. It was growing. They moved into other markets. They were in Hawaii. They were killing it with Jeep Wranglers and stuff. And then it started to get a little problematic. So there's a group called, it's the American Car Rental Association. I think it's ACRA. That's basically Hertz, Enterprise, Budget, those guys all came together and said, let's lobby the government to make things safer for the consumer, better for us. So that way a group like Turo can't come in and just bury us, right? So one of the things that they went and had pushed through was a regulation that states that you can't lease out a vehicle that has an open safety recall. Well, if you've ever owned a Porsche, a Range Rover, BMW, a Mercedes, you know that they'll recall these vehicles for literally everything, door squeaks a little bit, right? So that came into play, kind of taking some of their vehicles out when they had recalls and stuff open. Sometimes they were waiting on parts from Germany where things started to sit. So they started to kind of get into a little bit of trouble there. That wasn't nearly as bad as it got though. So a little bit further down the road, they ran into a problem with Turo where I won't go into the details of it, but basically Turo said, you guys can't lease cars on our platform. They had, I don't know the exact number, but north of 100 vehicles that were high-end vehicles. We're talking $1,000+ a month leases that they were cash flowing on, assets, I guess, that they didn't even own. Kind of like an Airbnb arbitrage model, almost, if you will. And all of a sudden, they couldn't rent them out. What do you do, right? So my friend and his wife were personally on the line for 30 leases between Porsches, BMWs, things of that nature, that they couldn't just pay off, right? So long story short, this group ended up going under, took all kinds of people through bankruptcy, rough situations, cars getting repossessed, debt collectors, all that stuff, right? Where none of us ever want to end up. But it really paralleled for me some of what I saw happening when COVID hit with Airbnb, right? All of a sudden, Airbnb was yeah, you can just, refund your booking to customers, which like wasn't super helpful for the hosts. And then you also had things come through, like I've got a friend of mine in Hawaii who's an Instagram follower that had 7 or 8 condos, and Honolulu came out and said, hey, no rentals under like 31 days. So all of a sudden, all of his short-term rentals didn't work and wouldn't cash flow on their own. So why am I sharing with you like a car rental business going under? Well, I think it parallels really well to Airbnb. If you don't want your business to rely solely on someone else's. So like with this house that I'm doing, I could rent it out retail and it wouldn't cash flow great, but it would cash flow, it would pay for itself, and there'd be some monthly left over. I'm moving it the Airbnb route in hopes of pushing my return higher. However, this deal wouldn't make sense for me to do if I wasn't getting a good deal, if I wasn't going to have equity or the ability to sell it. If my only way to monetize this property was to lease it out on like an Airbnb or a VRBO, and travel gets restricted, or Airbnb gets sued, or the town I'm in outlaws like short-term rentals or something, I could be in a position where I own a property that I can't monetize, and I'm only in that position because I built my business on the back of someone else's. I know guys that were doing like the Airbnb arbitrage thing. All of a sudden, they couldn't rent stuff out. What do, right? You have all these leases on places that you don't own, and you were leasing it to somebody else for more money. Now, COVID was like what they call like a black swan event, meaning nobody really saw it coming. Nobody was really prepared for it. It's not like it's something that's happened recently. So, we just don't know what the next one or the next thing could be. And as an investor, it's really, really smart to make sure that you're building your business in such a way that you have multiple exits, right? I could lease this house out to a family. It's in a military town. I could rent it out by the bedroom. It's in an area that has some vacation draw. It's like 15 minutes from the beach. So I could throw it on an Airbnb or a VRBO. Or worst case scenario, if I can't rent it out or it's not cash flowing like I want, I can turn around and sell it as a flip and make a pretty healthy income. So I've seen in particular with how hot the market is, there's a lot of investors that like feel like they're missing out, and there's almost a little bit of a frenzy of like, I want to be involved, I want to be doing deals. So they're trying to like force deals that aren't deals of like, well, this only cash flows if I'm able to Airbnb it and have it full every single day. Like that's not really a deal that you should be doing because it doesn't have equity. You don't have multiple exit strategies. So you want to make sure you're setting yourself up for success and have multiple ways to get there, not just like the stars need to align, this other business needs to be going well, and travel needs to be flourishing in order for me to break even on this property. Especially when you keep in mind that most investors are using 20 or 30 year loans. None of us know what Airbnb is going to look like 20 or 30 years from now. None of us know what travel is going to look like 20 or 30 years from now. So ideally, you always want to have multiple exits. Hopefully you guys enjoyed kind of just this like parable style a little bit. It was a business that when they were first starting out, I was like, how can I get in on this? I have good credit. Maybe I should lease some cars for these guys and like get some cash flow on some cool vehicles, right? And hindsight, looking back, I'm obviously super, super thankful that it's something I ended up not moving forward with. So you want to kind of just keep that in mind, make sure you have cash reserves, make sure you have multiple exit strategies, and make sure that you're getting good deals, even though it might feel like you're missing out because you're not doing one right now.